Hey, everybody. Welcome to this Mid-Gulch Plan Amendment Community Meeting. My name is Nora Yu. I'm a senior planner here at the Planning Department. Welcome to everybody. We're really glad you all could join us. We may have some additional folks joining as we go, but we'll go ahead and get started here. So as you all saw or know, this is regarding case 2021 CP 009002. We now have a website set up specifically for this plan amendment. So encourage everyone to take a look there. It's now our landing page with regards to this Mid-Gulch plan amendment, and it is midgulchstudy.nashville.gov. So we will be updating that as this project kind of continues on. Ooh, hang on. Okay, quickly, some just very quick housekeeping. I think everyone is muted to start. We're going to keep that the case while we run through the quick introduction, and then we really want to use most of the meeting for Q&A. So at that portion, you're welcome to type comments into the Q&A window within WebEx. You're also welcome to raise your virtual hand, and we will unmute you so you can ask your question that way as well. If anyone is joining by phone, that's a listen only mode. But at the end of the presentation, I'll share my email and happy to field any questions or comments after this meeting as well. The meeting is being recorded, so it will be accessible on the Metro YouTube page after the meeting's completed and once the recording's all finalized. So it can be revisited that way as well. So as I said, I'm Nora Yu. I'm with the Planning Department in the Design Studio. I will just quickly introduce my colleagues on the call. We have Joni Williams, Anita McCaig, Jared Isles, and John Ralston Graham. So we're all on the planning team on both the community plans and design studio teams, and we are working together on this effort. Just as a quick overview of what we're going to cover, we will be looking a little bit, kind of do a nice overview, quick overview on the community planning process here in Nashville, and then we'll look at some key issues and the map for this particular Mid-Gulch area. And then we really want to open it up to you all and hear if there's any questions and any discussion points that you all may have to bring up. And I will note at this point, we're in the early stages of this plan amendment process. So we're really excited for this community meeting. We want to hear from you all. You know, there's no draft yet. We're really going to start actively working on the content, and we want to hear your thoughts and take those into account as we start that process. So this is an important meeting to us, and we're really glad you all could join. At the very end, we'll also just kind of quickly recap some next steps for this process. So right now, why are we here? We're going to look specifically at the land use policy in this Mid-Gulch area. We'll take a look at the process. We'll be able to answer any questions on that front. Like I said, it's mainly to hear from you all. We don't really want to speak too much. We want to hear your thoughts and comments. And essentially, once we gather all those comments, we've been doing a lot of research and also talking to certain property owners in the area. We will be putting together what we believe will be a supplemental policy for this area. So we will be making those recommendations, which will go to the Planning Commission. And we'll talk a little bit about the dates and our timeline at the end of this presentation. And right now, I'm going to pass it to Anita, who's going to give us the quick overview on community planning here in Nashville.
Thanks, Nora. So several of you know me already. Anita, I'm part of the long range planning team. And I know some of you are familiar with this, but we always like to take a moment to talk about community planning in Nashville and how things are laid out. So you have next, the general plan. You've got 14 community plans. They were established back in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And what they do is take the general plan and apply it specifically to certain geographic areas and talk about what unique role different areas play in the county, what unique features are present, what the vision, goals, and aspirations are. So of course, as you all know, this area is in the downtown community plan. And anytime areas need looked at again, reviewed, or updated, we always work in partnership with the community. Yes, Nora, you're good. And so, yeah, trying to move me along too fast. So the community character manual, we often say it's our land use policy dictionary. What it is talks about the different community character policies for each of the transect areas, rural, suburban, urban, provides direction for implementation tools, primarily zoning and overlays, and informs private and public investment. One of our main roles is through the capital improvements budget. And of course, it helps shape the form and character of the community. So a little bit about policy versus zoning. Oftentimes people get them confused. So when we say policy, we're talking about the guidance of the comprehensive plan, Nashville Next, community plans, the future vision for an area, what we want to see. Sometimes that's a combination of recognizing what's on the ground and what direction a community wants to go in. So finding some bridge between some of those. And then zoning in downtown, it's the downtown code, a form-based code. It's the law. It controls the physical development. And then when you come in and want to work with us on any type of rezoning, that's when the community plan and land use policy really comes into play. Is it back, Nora?
Yes, thank you, Anita. Thank you so much. So for the quick overview, very helpful. This is the area of this, what we're terming the Mid-Gulch plan amendment. So the study area, as you can see, it's marked in this dark outline. The borders are, MLK Jr Boulevard at the north, the CSX rail lines at the east, Broadway at the south, and then George L Davis Boulevard at the west, kind of the interstate, forming the western boundary. So this shows an aerial photo of this area. And this is what you saw that map, that was what was included in the public meeting notice. So that probably looks familiar. Just going back to what Anita was describing, this is the community character policy map for downtown. I have a little white dash line around the area we are talking about. So, there's the Gulch South area. We're really taking a look at why we're calling it the Mid-Gulch, kind of the northern part of that area. And that's what you see here. And I will zoom in a little bit so we can take a closer look. So currently the land use policy in place is this kind of lighter red hatch that is downtown neighborhood. We also have some open space and some civic policy in this zone. So this is the area in question. A few things on our radar just to get the wheels turning for everybody, and again we're gonna open this up shortly, but a few things that we're thinking about on the list: greenways and open space. There's the Gulch Greenway that comes through this area. So these are things that we have kind of already, we're ruminating on these items, but we would again love to hear any thoughts you have related to these or anything else. Interstate frontage. Also, the fact that when you look at the east and west boundaries of this area, you do have very unique frontage conditions. You have that George L Davis and interstate on the west, and then you have the rail lines on the east. So trying to negotiate how do you best build with those very unique frontages in mind, very different frontages. In addition, looking at pedestrian areas, how do we encourage pedestrian activity in this zone? So, as kind of this key developing part of downtown. And of course, the viaducts, which is a unique thing that happens downtown. And in this area, we have a number of examples of that. But, how do you negotiate when there's both a ground level of activity and then there's a viaduct level of activity, and figuring that out and figuring out some best practices for that. So what we're going to do, I'm going to switch over here for one moment. We're going to use Mentimeter, which is a tool we have used very successfully in other community meetings. And it's an opportunity to hear from you all just in a quick way. And I'm going to, let me open this up so that I can share this other screen. Hang tight with me for 1 second. Okay. So I'm going to share this screen. You will see a QR code and a website here. If you have a phone handy or another window you can open on a computer or a tablet, feel free to join. You don't have to. We'll show you the results as we go, but there's just 2 questions here. And this is kind of an interactive way where you can type in answers and then we will be able to all see them in real time. So if you go to menti.com, it'll ask you to enter a code. You can plug in that code right there, 60346871. You can scan the QR code. And I think if I'm going to go to the next slide because I think it will still have that info. It's at the top of the screen. You'll see the website and that code. But this is the area we are speaking of. You can see Broadway here, and this kind of shows you a little bit of the extent of this Mid-Gulch area. So going into the questions, first question is, what is the biggest asset that you see or experience or know about, or what you think is the biggest, kind of one of the biggest benefits or assets in this area? If you can plug that in, we should be able to see those results. And I might have to also ask Anita here, who's my Mentimeter expert, but no, I think, okay, here we go. So yeah, Shurian headquarters, we're seeing the pedestrian greenways, absolutely the Gulch Greenway being a special piece of downtown in this area. Connections, the location is key, absolutely, and just that it can form this link. I think what we're seeing in the planning department is just the fact that it is so, it's part of downtown and it's directly to the west of this core area. It certainly is facing a lot of development interest and a lot of activity. So yeah, absolutely, I think for a lot of these reasons. So then just the second question, what is the biggest challenge? Or yeah, challenge in the area, something that could be improved upon. Traffic, absolutely. Navigation, traffic, shrinking sidewalks, transportation connections, absolutely, absolutely. These are things on our radar as well, but it's great to see some of these thoughts written out. That's really helpful. So let me switch back here very quickly. So I think with all of those thoughts in mind, we want to go ahead, let me just make sure here. Okay. We would like to go ahead, I think, and open this up to you all. And I have my planning team here who's going to help me keep an eye on the list. If anyone would like to either type in a question or raise your virtual hand, we would love to open this forum up and just hear any thoughts, comments, questions, anything that anyone would like to kind of put out there on the table.
Hi, Nora. We have a question from Lee Davis. Does the character of this Mid-Gulch area need to cross to the south side of Broadway and north part of Charlotte and MLK?
I think, well, it's a good question. I mean, and I would welcome any of my colleagues to chime in here. I think that there's a unique situation happening in this particular zone that we're seeing in terms of development, interest and patterns. And I think the opportunity we see with this plan amendment is to help define the character of this area. I think then the question does become, okay, how does that maybe translate to what's happening south of Broadway, north of Charlotte? And that is certainly when we've been doing our research to date and we're gathering information on this area, we've certainly broadened our boundaries a little bit. So we're looking at, we were looking at developments that have happened north of Charlotte, the Frankie Pierce Park up there, when we were talking about open space and greenways, and then south of Broadway as well, obviously with all of the Gulch being such a hotspot that it is, it's all interconnected. So yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at the character of this specific Mid-Gulch area to start and wondering what makes that area distinct from those other two zones. But yet, of course, how do we also make sure it's very well connected to those two areas, north and south?
And Nora, Anita here again. We've got another question from Kim. Interest in how MLK Jr Multimodal Corridor may impact future density as we plan for future transit.
Yes, so this is one of the reasons that the planning department did kind of hone in on this area, was the fact that MLK or Charlotte was identified in the mayor's transportation plan. And I might ask Joni if there's anything that she would want to add in here, but I know the fact that it was identified as, I believe, technology corridor, meaning that technology for better bus service and transit could be tested specifically on that Charlotte/MLK stretch, really did highlight this area as one of interest for us too, from a transit perspective.
Nora, I think you covered it just fine. That's exactly what I would have highlighted. I think all of these east-west connections are certainly important. Charlotte has the benefit of being at grade for both 11th and 12th. All of the other connections are high and low. So I do think that Charlotte's accessibility into the lower level of all of this land is going to be key to the conversation for sure.
And Anita,
Nora, if I can just add, one of the quirks of working in WebEx is that our attendees can't see each other. And so I just wanted to say for the folks who are joining, there are about 15 other folks on the call. You can see all of us panelists who are Metro staff, but I know that you can't see the other list, and I just wanted to give you a sense for how many folks are here. We have 15 attendees beyond the Metro staff that's here.
And Anita here again. We have a question from Lee Davis. Is Hind Street forever NES's? The east-west connection in the Gulch is always stressed, both for vehicles and pedestrians.
Joni, I may ask you to weigh in on that one. I know that we were looking at that, and we are in touch with Public Works as well. We're trying to schedule some internal, reviews and meetings with them as we look at this area, and that is a question on our list.
Nora, could you go back to kind of an aerial of this area? I think what Lee is talking about is Hind's, yes, exactly, that east-west connection that is kind of that right-of-way, I believe, was abandoned and is just now NES property in kind of the middle of their complex. I think, like any large property owners that we have here, we would be looking for those connection opportunities if NES were moving forward with something different than what they have now. So I think Hind Street should be considered an opportunity if it's ever available for discussion.
And Anita here again. We have another question from Kim Hawkins. Can an incentive be made for connected greenways and alternative transportation, vertical to viaducts and horizontal?
Thank you, Kim. Yes, that's something I think also on our radar. And Joni, please weigh in. But I was just going to say we were in touch with the Parks Department, and I think that's something important, as people noted in the Menti questions. It's an important aspect that we have the Gulch Greenway in this area, and how to not just have it exist. Apologies, I keep clicking forward, as an island, but really make sure that Greenway can continue to connect and possibly serve as some sort of backbone or spine to a constellation of green open spaces in this area where that is lacking currently.
I would just invite Kim and anybody else to comment on what incentives would be interesting on the menu. I think it's a completely reasonable point of discussion about, what would be enticing to somebody if they were working on connected greenways, vertical, horizontal, however that might be. So I'd invite your thoughts in the Q&A box, or shoot Nora an email with any thoughts you might have about that.
Okay, ready for another question? I feel like it's Anita. See how well I can read out loud. There has already been a lot of development in this area, so there are limited land buildings that may be redeveloped, including the building we own at 121 12th Avenue North. So this policy change seems like it will only impact the properties that are not redeveloped. It seems these policy recommendations will only limit the density, building heights, and setbacks on these buildings not yet redeveloped.
So that's a great question, Colleen, and I'd like to chime in and think about it in two different ways. One, policy is both for private sector and public sector recommendations. So there could be a list of recommendations that says, as a property redevelops, it could be encouraged to do X, Y, Z. There could also be a list of Metro, this place is growing and changing. Here is a list of capital improvement budget items that should go in the CIB, and that Metro can participate in the investment in this area. So it's not just private sector, it's also public sector recommendations. And then second, you mentioned the word limit. I don't think that policy limits. It also can open up opportunities for additional height, density, form, whatever that might be. So policy doesn't, it calibrates to the changing needs of a community. So I would just throw that out there as the two different opportunities that we see on the table right now.
And I'm seeing, Kim, thank you for your comment there too. Just following up on, I think how do you incentivize connective greenways and looking at, potential for higher multiplier, I think toward bonus height allowance as one example of doing that. If you are providing some sort of connection or open space for whether it's a greenway or some other type of park space. So yes, thank you for that. We'll note it down kind of as we're going through and putting this policy, the ideas together. That's helpful to hear that.
And Nora, now we have a question about, has any consideration been taken for any public art requirements with new development? Downtown, there's sprinkling of public art. The Gulch and Capitol View have public art that make each neighborhood special.
This is a great thing to have on our radar, and thank you for pointing that out. I think a few of our team members were walking this, whole area this week just to take it in, and we'll continue to do so because there are so many kind of unique conditions. And actually the public art, I believe up at Capitol View and some of what was in the Gulch was on that visit. That kind of came up in the site photos we took, and just understanding that is something that's been proposed and implemented in nearby areas. So thank you. Yes, that's something that we will also add to our list as we're kind of working through this. I think that it's something that could be an important component to kind of some of the placemaking that we may want to aim for here.
Nora, I'd like to chime in. I believe Councilman OConnell has been able to join us. I wanted to give him the opportunity to speak for a moment if he would like to.
Great, thanks, Joni. I don't know why my camera isn't working. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. One thing I wanted to note too, as some of this conversation is focused also on infrastructure, is that Metro just a few weeks ago entered into a grant agreement under a federal opportunity with $1.5 million of federal, $1 million of state, and $500,000 to enhance the smart corridor characteristics of Charlotte in this stretch and running actually good ways east. That's going to include features like traffic signal priority, and really helping there not be likely a log jam any transit vehicles, and that's going to improve throughput on this corridor. So there's a lot of work that Metro is doing kind of coincident to this proposal to try to improve infrastructure and technology that's related to infrastructure and transit services in this corridor.
Thank you, Councilman OConnell. That's good to hear, and we're glad you could join us here for this discussion. I want to ask if there's any other thoughts or comments that anyone may want to put out on the table at this time.
William Hastings has one. Ways to help incentivize incremental property tax abatement to offset investment in public infrastructure, like a vertical connection from the viaducts to 11th Avenue South and Mid-Gulch.
Great. Yeah, having those suggestions, it's very helpful. And we know many of you work in this area, have really deep knowledge of this area, have projects happening. So yeah, I think hearing your thoughts, it's very helpful for us as we're digging in. Anything else that anyone would want to bring up at this moment? I think there's another question here. What kind of height limits are being considered? It is nice that there is some consistency between the Gulch and Capitol View. So I think going back to how Joni was phrasing it previously, so the policy that we're going to be looking at is not changing the zoning. So it's not going to be definitively, necessarily saying X number of stories. That's kind of not necessarily in the purview of the policy, but I want Anita and Joni to weigh in here if there's anything else that they want to add to what I'm saying. But I think the idea is in the policy, we're really going to look at where could height be appropriate. And then if so, in what context and in what way. And if we can start to lay that stage out in the policy, that's what our goal will be there. And then at that point, future decisions regarding zoning and the downtown code and heights will be in part based on this supplemental policy that we develop here. So we're hoping to get into a little bit of a finer grain look at this area, almost block by block, just trying to figure out what's happening, how can the development move forward in a holistic, good way for downtown. And I think then we're setting that stage, but we're not going to be implementing really any height specificity in that sense in the policy, not in terms of the zoning. Anita and Joni, did I cover that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was great, Nora. The only thing I would chime in and add is many of you are aware that at the other end of the Gulch, kind of at the southeast corner of the Gulch, Division Street was just a few years ago, a bridge was built over the CSX line there to connect Division Street over to the kind of Pie Town, Lafayette district. When that investment happened, the policy for that area was adjusted. So there was better connections. Division Street was no longer a dead end cul-de-sac, basically. It now had had connections in two directions. And the policy for that area was changed or adjusted to encourage or allow, incentivize greater height in that area because the vehicular and pedestrian connections were better. The zoning was not changed. So the policy was adjusted, the zoning was not changed, and in so doing that, there was an opportunity for folks to dial in and consider how their project could contribute to the neighborhood in a sort of upgraded way, and then they would have the opportunity to take advantage of that policy. But nobody's entitlements were adjusted at that point. I could see something like this happening, something similar to that happening in this area, where we talk about policy in this sort of limited, unusual conditions of viaducts and interstate and railroad and high and low. And the policy explains opportunities, but the entitlements are still, you know, what we have all known them to be for 10 years. So that's kind of the difference. And maybe Nora, if you could land back on that slide about the difference between policy and zoning. And I would just reiterate that we are at the beginning of this process. So I think that's important. You know, we're here to listen to your questions and thoughts. And Nora is going to pass along her contact info to you all. So feel free to reach out. We're happy to meet with folks one-on-one. We're happy to come out to the site and, you know, visit, walk through the neighborhood with you, see your property or properties that you're interested in talking about. We would be happy to do that so that we're heading toward a planning commission meeting, but there's no draft yet because we're still listening. And there are a few things that we've noticed along the way, but we're excited to hear your thoughts, the places you see opportunities, the places you see hurdles, and work to integrate those thoughts and comments into the policies that we take to the commissioners.
Are there any other questions or comments? I'll go back through these photos and maybe land here just going off of what Joni was saying. Yes, our tentative kind of next steps, just so everyone's aware, we're aiming to have a draft of this supplemental policy posted by June 29th. And then the goal is to go to Planning Commission on July 22nd. So those are kind of the two key dates we have on our immediate radar. We do have this landing page, midgulchstudy.nashville.gov. We're going to update that as we go. So that's a great spot to kind of bookmark and check back for updates. But that's our tentative schedule moving forward from this point. As Joni noted, we are definitely happy to speak with anybody. We've spoken with a few property owners, a few architects working in the area, but we are happy to, you know, set up one-on-one meetings, as Joni said, even come to the site, take a look with you and have a site discussion, hear your comments and feedback. We're here for that. So please feel free to email me. My email's on this page, nora.u@nashville.gov. And we are happy to set any of those types of meetings or discussions up. So as well as field any additional questions or comments that may come to you after this meeting ends. I think my email is also on that website page, the Mid-Gulch study page. So again, we're here to listen, as Joni said, and we're really happy to do so. Before we close, is there anything else that anyone would want to bring up at this time? I think then that's it for today. But again, thank you so much to everyone for joining us, for giving us some of your thoughts, your feedback, and your questions. Stay in touch. Feel free to reach out to me with again, any questions or comments or just thoughts that come to you on this study. We are really wanting to make sure we listen to everyone and kind of have everyone's contributions as we work on this effort. So thank you to all. Take care, everybody. Speak soon. And thank you to Sharday from ITS for helping us with all of the technology on this call, which went very smoothly, I might add. So that's always exciting. Thank you, Sharday.